Okay, y'all, so let's have a conversation about your boy Charles, because the internet has been buzzing about him for the past 3 weeks now. So let's go ahead and have a real in-depth conversation about him. Let's get into it. Okay, y'all, so we were introduced to the character Charles as the father of Terry and Meech Flannery. Now, the character has been portrayed as a good man who is, dedicated to his family, to his children, to his wife, to making his household better. Charles is someone who goes out to work. He works for GM, and he brings his wife Lucille home the check, and then she then disperses the money out to pay the bills. Now, we have learned that this household is going through a time where they are suffering financially. They don't have a lot of things that they need, and even though Charles works every day, it's still not enough to cover everything in the household, to the point where they also almost lost their home, and their son Meech stepped in and ended up paying the mortgage for them. And Charles didn't like this at all. Charles was very upset about Meech paying the bills because he didn't want drug money to pay his mortgage. Now, we can take a lot from this. I know that, in my opinion, when you see him not wanting to take this money, even though he knows that this is something that is going to save his household, even though he knows that this is something that is going to keep his family from being out on the streets, but he didn't want to do this for the simple fact that it was drug money. And in his mind, this was wrong. Charles is a very religious man, so he would have rather either try to figure it out, even though based on how the story portrayed, there was no figuring this out. This was make or break. This was do or die. That mortgage was done for. They were going to lose their home if it didn't get paid. But he would rather have, gone through that than to take money from Meech. So I say all of this to say that Charles has been painted as this person who is truly good from the inside and wants to do what's right, and wouldn't even compromise his morals in order to not lose his home. He would rather lose his home than to compromise his morals. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about everything that was going on in the Flannery home that kind of led up to the moments that we have been discussing for the last 3 weeks with this character, Charles. Now, we are going to see that Charles and Lucille, of course, are going through a very hard time financially, and this is weighing on their marriage. We are seeing that Lucille discusses money quite often, and that a lot of the times Charles isn't really wanting to hear this. Now, I do just want to point out one very important thing, that at the end of the day, life is life. Real life is real life. People have bills, they have mortgages, they have things that they have to pay for. And when you cannot pay for these things, when you do not know how you're going to pay your mortgage, when you do not know how you're going to buy your daughter bras, when you don't know how you're going to put food on your table, this can be very, very hard on a family. This can be very hard on a marriage. Now, we all know from one of the episodes that Lucille is the one that actually pays all the bills. So she sees things from a different perspective that Charles may not see them from, because he's just giving her his paycheck, but he's not seeing that it's not enough to cover everything, to the point where Lucille at some point has to go out and get a job at Wendy's to try to help cover the bill. And yet it's still not enough to financially keep them afloat. Now, we are going to see in one episode where I feel like some of this kind of started and triggered, where we started to really discuss Charles a lot more, is when he wants to have relations with his wife, but she has to get up in a few hours and she's just not in the mood to have relations with him. We are also going to see in another episode when Charles and Lucille are having an argument because he's about to go over to Mabel's house to fix the fan, and she points out that the walls in their home have been damaged for years and he still hasn't fixed them yet. And then he goes on to tell her, like, look, I dare you I dare you embarrass me like that in front of the pastor, because she asked the pastor for guidance, for help, and he felt like that was disrespectful. And he asked, when is he going to get some respect? And she tells him when he earns respect. Okay, y'all. So there's also going to be an episode where Lucille actually ends up purchasing, this nightgown, and she does it with a credit card that she has put in her daughter's name. And Charles and Lucille end up having an argument about this situation. Lucille tells him that she did it because she wanted to measure up to the women that he's been looking at in these magazines. And Charles in return tells her that he wouldn't have to get the magazines if she wouldn't make sleeping with him a chore. And she tells him that she just feels like she has to be everything for everybody and that she's tired. And Charles tells her, well, look here, it seems that St. Lucille made some sacrifices and now she wants praise from the Pope. Now, Charles would go on to tell Lucille that there was a time when she used to like him, that he's her husband, and that it would be nice if she wanted him as much as he wants her. Now, we all know what would happen from here. Charles ends up sleeping with Mabel, not once, but he actually does it twice. I mean, at this point, I've heard so many different viewpoints on this, from the fact that Charles is justified because his wife didn't sleep with him. Charles is justified because his wife said something that was disrespectful to him. Charles was justified because his wife wasn't being there for him the way that she needed to be there for him. Charles is justified because Lucille caused this. I mean, how many different ways can we say that a person is justified for doing something that is completely and immorally wrong, yet in the same breath, we say that Lucille was wrong for not saying anything about Meech paying the mortgage. We say that Charles has all of this morality when he doesn't accept the money that Meech tries to provide them so that he doesn't lose his home, so that his family isn't out on the street. But yet Charles sleeps with a woman that is not his wife, who happens to be the next door neighbor, who by his own mention says, hey, you're family. When she offers to pay him, he tells her that she's family. So if you feel like she's family, that means that she's also family to your wife. So what you're saying is essentially that you just went and slept with family, making this an even deeper wound that Lucille is now going to have to heal from when she finds out about this infidelity. There is no way, form, or fashion that you could ever convince me that Lucille was the cause of this and that Charles is justified. Now, the real problem is communication. Nobody was communicating. This is Lucille and Charles. They're both talking at each other, but nobody is truly listening to what the other person has to say. Now, I want to be completely clear. I am not trashing Charles or trying to demean him in any type of way or trying to take away from the fact that he has been a stand-up guy. That is not the point. The point is that we can't continue to justify Charles's actions and act like there is a real justification for what he did and blame it on his wife when it is all said and done. Let us be real. There are times when women don't want to have sex. There are times when people are tired. Life is life. Life is real, and just because your partner is not wanting to have sex right then doesn't give you the right to go and cheat on your partner, because let us be real. If this was Lucille, if this was in reverse, if Lucille was doing the same exact thing in reverse, we would all be like, Lucille is trash. Lucille is horrible. Lucille is a hoe. Lucille is a skeezer, a tramp, a whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, we would all have so many negative things to say about Lucille because Charles is over there working hard and bringing home his paycheck, and he's doing all this, and she's out here sleeping with the next door neighbor. You know what I'm saying? Doing all these things at his house, cleaning his house, doing all this for him, but her husband husband is out, you know, trying to do what's right. Like, we would have a lot to say about this, and no one can convince me that we wouldn't. Like, there's not one person that would say that we wouldn't straight tear into Lucille if this was her. And I do mean everybody. I'm just keeping it real. There would be no love for Lucille at all if she was doing this in reverse. Not to mention, we can go so much deeper with this, because what if Lucille happens to get sick and she can't have sex or doesn't want to have sex all the time? What if something like that were to happen? Would Charles still be justified to go out and sleep with other women just because he can't fulfill that need that he feels like he needs to fulfill? Like, there's just so many different things that can come up. Marriage is supposed to be about for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health. And I feel like Lucille has been there for her husband. Has she done some things that is wrong? Everybody makes mistakes. And that's why I was initially willing to give Charles a pass, because, well, not necessarily a pass, but to give him a break and not be so hard on him, because everybody does make mistakes. And I wanted to chop this up to a mistake that Charles made, and that he would go and be honest with his wife, tell his wife what happened, and that he would make a clean break from Mabel and let that go. But he had to let his wife know, because she couldn't be in the dark about what happened, you know, because they neighbors, the lady come eat at her house. Like, this was something that he had to tell. However, Charles doesn't do any of that. You know, Charles instead lies to his wife's face, tells her that there's nothing going on with Sister Riley and him, because we do know there is nothing going on with him and Sister Riley, but that was still a lie in a sense. A half lie is still a lie. You know, he goes on to then tell her that he's dedicated to her. He goes over to Mabel's house, which he didn't need to go to Mabel's house. A phone call would have sufficed, you know, to tell her that whatever they had going on, they can't do it anymore. He could have sent a carrier pigeon for all I care. He didn't need to go to her house. He didn't need to go in her home. He could have stood at the door and told her that he never had to walk in that house. Charles made a choice. And at the end of the day, although people make mistakes, they also make choices. And this was a choice that Charles made. And there is no justification for that. Right is right and wrong is wrong, you know? And the minute Mabel rubbed those breastises up against him and he folded after saying that he wanted to make his marriage work, that he was dedicated to his family, that shows a lot about who Charles really is at the true core, at the true nature. One mistake, okay, but doubling back and then taking your very word and not keeping it doesn't make Charles a great husband at all, y'all. So anyway, y'all, that's what's up with Charles. Let me know what y'all think about this whole situation. I know a lot of people have a lot to say about it, so go ahead and get down in the comments and, you know, have a great discussion, guys. Keep it cute though, y'all. Don't get into no arguments in these comments, okay? Meanwhile, guys, do not forget that we are doing the subscribe-a-thon all week long. This is brought to you by @Big Reviews. He has challenged his fellow creators to create, so we are doing 7 videos for 7 days straight. So make sure that you go and check out the people who are participating in this. If you go to my homepage, right at the top, you'll see subscribe-a-thon, and the people that I know that are participating thus far, you'll see them there. Go check out their content. If you like what you see, then go ahead and subscribe to their channel, guys. Meanwhile, guys, YouTube tells me that you just might like this video next, so go ahead and check it out. Until next time, guys, peace.